Welcome back to Easthaven County, where I've just discovered a pretty massive issue that will result in a population loss of more than 10,000 people if left unattended. Yeah, so I went into recording this episode with plans to begin the development of the old Fort John Inner Harbor area, but as I unpaused the game and let it run for a few minutes, our population figure started to dramatically decrease. And within a pretty short time frame, the county had lost more than 15% of all residents. Now, you can probably imagine how I have been desperately trying to locate what the issue is, and I figured it might be something to do with service or utility coverage. But as I bring forth the menu here, you guys can see that we really don't have all that many issues here in Easthaven, and generally people are pretty happy. So it wasn't until I grabbed the Sim Census mod to get a deeper insight into our demographic situation that I realized that we have almost 10,000 homeless people throughout the city. So what's basically happening here is that the most recent patch, which included a bug fix of the homelessness issue, is gonna force these people to either find somewhere to live within their budget or basically just leave the city in droves. And that leaves us with two options. We can either just let this happen, continue developing the inner city harbor, or we can desperately pause the game and try to provide some new housing in hopes of keeping some of these people within the city. We are definitely going to be adding more housing, but it's not going to be without consequences because the homeless people don't really use services, utilities, or the job market. If we find some that have congregated around this park, for instance, you can see that they are unemployed here in occupation. So if we are able to provide housing for 3,000 or 4,000 people, that is going to put a massive additional strain on all the services we provide. And additionally, it's going to create a very hot labor market where unemployment is likely to rise. Now, a couple of notes before we get going. Firstly, we're going to try and add housing in a realistic fashion of all densities. We could probably just spam high density residential and be done with it, but that would kind of break the immersion, for me at least. This also means we likely won't be able to provide housing for all 10,000 people. Additionally, I would very much appreciate a like and comment on this video if you enjoy my content, and maybe consider enabling notifications as well. Not just so you don't miss out on future videos, but so you don't miss out on future votes, such as this cool one where we are deciding on the future of this centrally located lot just south of downtown Fort John. Alright, so I've loaded the most recent save game and I've put a pause to our impending doom. And while we are going to be developing lots of different densities and different types of neighborhoods, I think the low-hanging fruit is to densify the inner city areas of Fort John. More specifically, we have a lot of empty space here alongside Sterling Lake, and we're going to develop this in two steps. One is alongside Orchard Lane here, where I think we can fit a couple of high-density towers that will kind of look like a public housing project. And then another development which we're going to add to this side of the lake. So we're basically going to do some extensive terraforming and kind of create a bit of a plateau here. And I think this is going to tie in pretty well with a few comments I've received that kind of criticize just how dangerous it actually is to live this close to Sterling Lake, or rather this cliffside here. There's not much recreational usage here if you're scared of falling to your death, basically. So these are two quick approaches we can take. I'm going to start with the terraforming because we need a road to go down here so that we can build an additional public housing project down here. So I'm just going to find a water level that is a couple of meters above the surface level, but not much more than that. Probably going to reduce the brush size a bit so I have a little more control. And we're just going to clear the space. Kind of like this, I think. I just need to check where the water source. Okay, so it's around here. I don't expect this to add any issues. Just gonna hit play just to make sure. No problem. Gonna pause again because we definitely need to have things paused as we build this. And then let's see. We need a couple of access roads. Potentially we could take this lane here and kind of bridge that down here as well. and kind of make it go through like an interesting route. So we're just going to, I think, click down here with no snapping selected. Then we're going to enable the constant slope here, as well as contour lines. Gonna enable Anarchy to give me the freedom I want, and then I'm going to try to not go beyond 10% incline, so that it's still pretty easily accessible with a you know, a less powerful vehicle. Let's see. Oh, that's bad. That is bad. How am I going to... I think I'm gonna cheat a bit. So I got this connection in place. I'm gonna use move it. We'll make sure to just add a key alongside the entire stretch as we move up here, potentially also alongside this original stretch, and we've got a small connection going. For the connection on this side, we're gonna commit a bit of a grave sin by actually demolishing a bit of housing. But the reason is just that I want the lane to start from around here. Because that is also going to provide a bit of an additional zoning opportunity for a bit of extra row housing here on either side, which I think is going to work out pretty well. And then I actually think we're going to have a small bridge crossing here. We'll enable snapping again, and I'll be using the complex curve tool to try and connect these two up. So if I can click once here and once down here. So I want to use the perpendicular parking alley to not only provide some parking for the housing units we'll be building here, but also to act as a key wall. So I'll just be adding a, let's see, I'm going to freeform, I think, a straight segment. Just like that. And then we'll add a curved segment from around here, I think. And then we're just gonna connect to the connection we have down here. Something like this. And then I'm just gonna break it up with a little alleyway in between with no parking, just to make it look a little more interesting. And obviously we need a connection here. Now let's see. We may be able to do this and just a little nicer. Maybe the... let's just use the complex curve. So if I move out here and I click, and we click once more out here and just connect, that should look a little better. It does. I like these alleys because if we move into road services and upgrade these to key segments, then as you guys can see, they are very, very much reduced in size. So now I can do a bit of terraforming here and just make the edges here of Sterling Lake move closer to the key here in a more natural looking fashion. Something like this. And I'm probably gonna add a key here and here as well. So let's just get that sorted out. 1 and 2. And now we have a bit of parking provided. But I do want to add a bit more parking here. So if we grab the very same alley and maybe we're just gonna do like a full upgrade of this segment, and then we could upgrade this segment but add a key as well right here, just to kind of reduce that a bit. And it doesn't have to function as a key, it just looks like a guardrail if there are no terraforming differences or terrain differences here, which is perfect. Let's start with the low-rent housing towers here alongside Orchard Lane. So we'll open up Find It, and we'll go to Buildings, Residential, search for high density, and I'm just going to put low into the search bar here. That is going to filter, so we have all the low-rent options. I think we're going to ignore the stuff in the fringe pack for now. Although, ooh, they are very pretty, aren't they? Maybe we'll add those over here. Not really sure yet. I think we're gonna go for lots that aren't too wide because it's kind of hilly here. So let's try and filter by a lot width of 2 and see what we can find. Something like this could be a pretty good fit. The balconies would even be angled towards the view sides of the bay. Which I guess would be a nice little thing, although it's a little too deep. So if we say we want to check out some 2x3s at first, I think these might be a little too small. 2x4 should give us a version of the one we just looked at. Let's see. This run here, yes. So we may use 4 of these, maybe 2 tall ones and 2 that are just slightly smaller. So let's see, I'm just gonna deselect the snapping so that I can freely place these, because that's going to make the fit look a little more tailored for this area. So we've got this one here, which we may move up to the top of the hill. We'll get that placed. We'll drop the height then so that the people in the tall building have the best views. And we'll place 1 and 2 and 3. And that is a pretty cool development. We are going to silently relocate this nice little building here. Let's just move it out here. There you go. Much better. Moving back, the colors of these. Oh, there are some drab, boring options here, but I mean, I guess that is fairly realistic. I'm gonna go for something that's a little darker. We'll click this little icon, and then we can just easily recolor the entire project. Since the location here alongside the lake waterfront is actually pretty nice, we're gonna go for some slightly more fancy. I'm thinking medium density. I've gone for 3 tiles deep, for starters at least. And then I think one of the quote-unquote European themed buildings might actually be what we'll be going with. Something like this that was built a couple of decades ago, so it doesn't have a super modern contemporary look, but it doesn't really look too European to be able to fit in either. So let's see, I'm gonna try something out here. I'm gonna place 1 real close to the road and then maybe just bring 1 back a bit. Not so far that it, of course, complains about a lack of road connection. Something like this, maybe. We'll bring 1 close again, and I'm gonna stitch these 2 together, but then I'm going to manually move them, and hopefully there'll be no complaints. And then we might go for something else here, because we're starting to lose a bit of space, actually. So let's just see if I grab these 2, and I move them right over here, then maybe I'll be able to... Oh, I'm gonna need more space. Let's see. We'll move this 1 close, and then we could potentially just change how these are angled so that it's the other way around, and then just bring this back a little. Alright, so I'm gonna grab this one, which has a red base, and then we're going to make it more red, but also a lot darker. Something like that. And then, is this the roof? It is. We're gonna make that darker as well. And then we'll copy paste that to the remaining buildings, and then we have to find something different for this lot here. These 3x2 UK themed medium flats also have a pretty interesting roof structure, and I think we can kind of splice these together as well, just as we've done with the other buildings down here, which is it's slightly cheaty because it actually allows me to kind of up the density additionally, because, you know, the buildings, you know, they're technically stitched together, so they add more housing units per the same footprint that they otherwise would. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. Let's see if I can add even 1 more here and then just do it the other way around, something like this. Yank. And then I'm just gonna grab move it, and I'm gonna make sure that we don't have any texture clipping on the roofs here, so they're not at the perfectly same height, which is perfect. Now I just need a color scheme I like. I think I like this one here, so we're just gonna grab that and move that through. And then as far as the detailing goes, well, I'm gonna remove the hedges from the innermost building at least, because otherwise that's not gonna make a lot of sense, as well as the bushes, probably just from all of them. Might even go with a custom surface. Safe to say that Briarwood Lane needs a bit of a retaining wall now. And then I'm going to see if I can make this look a little less dramatic. because things are turning crazy now. So I'm just going to flatten the terrain here, and then we're just gonna smoothen it out a little bit. We're gonna fix up the Sterling Hill district so that we ensure that the demographics of this area is covered by one of the districts, and the service providers that handle this district will automatically provide services for this new area. And how is Lakeside looking? I guess this is all right. I think this building is covered by Lakeside. Good old oak trees to cover up some of the very obvious imperfections we have back here. Maybe even cover up parts of the hillside here, just make it look a little more foresty and whatnot. I've decided I'm not gonna do any heavy detailing of this area just yet. For now, we're just building new housing, not detailing it. And I think that's a pretty good addition to the city. It kind of helps frame the lake a little more and solve some of the issues I mentioned before with the lake, and obviously it adds a ton of new housing. And while manually plopping down buildings certainly feels like the right move for projects like these, I think it's time we get to some zoning. We're gonna turn this entire hill into a somewhat historic row house district. And Chestnut Terrace is very much just a placeholder, so if you have a suggestion for a new name and a bit of a backstory, then please let me know. I imagine it's probably pretty close tied to the port due to its proximity to it, and maybe a bit of a low-income neighborhood or just working class, something of the sort at least. Anyways, for the zoning, I am gonna grab some of my custom alleyways. And let's see, I think I'm gonna find the suburban one, which is just a basic alley with parking on either side. And that's gonna be kind of the main road that cuts through the area here. And I am going to remove all toggling. And we're gonna start from out here. And I'm just gonna try and make this as smooth as possible. That's not gonna work, because it's at a bit of an odd angle here, so I actually need a bit more of an angle. I needed to kind of follow the interstate a bit. I imagine there used to be some other through road here many years ago. Let's see how that looks zoning wise. It looks all right. I think we can work with that. There are a few gaps and whatnot, but that's the same for Sterling Hill, and I think that worked out all right. Let's get a slightly smaller road in place next to it. So I think we're gonna grab the same road, but just with parking on one side instead of on both sides. And now hopefully in this case here, I am able to, let's see, drag an almost parallel configuration down to at least... Actually, let's just connect that up. And hopefully this will result in, yeah, the zoning is deep enough for a proper row house district. So that worked out pretty well. Now down here, we need a few traffic rules, because otherwise this is going to turn into a right mess. So we're gonna remove the crossings. We are gonna remove the traffic lights. Then we'll disallow this left turn. And we will disallow this left turn so that we have a continuous flow of traffic here. I'll be enabling snapping just to get this final road connection here in place. Yoink. And it looks all right. I think we're just gonna see if we can get the zoning away from Autumn Street, so it's only aligned to the lanes here. And I'll do the same over here. I'm going to be adding a few stops as well. They represent roads that used to be able to cross over here when this was like a major road of some sort, but not an actual interstate. But obviously these roads don't really lead to anywhere now that we have the interstate cutting through. And maybe if I enable snapping, it would make sense for at least this one to cut through the area as well. And once again, I'm just using the keys here to ensure that zoning is aligned to these two cross streets that move through the hill here. And we do seem to have just a bit of space for an additional road here as well, so we can add a bit more zoning. Something like this, and maybe even a connection down here to this complex mess. I'm just gonna check 17%. I mean, that is that's very steep, but I kind of want to add this connection because I think it makes sense to have an easy connection to the port facilities. And we'll just get this connected in, and once again gonna make sure that our zoning is aligned exactly as we want it. We desperately need to place a school out here as well, so I think we're grabbing the community elementary school from the modern architecture pack. And I'm not gonna place it up here amongst the historic row houses. I think that might look a little odd, a little out of character, so I'm just gonna align it against the street down here and get that placed right about there. Does it have an upgrade? It does. 150 student capacity, as well as some park area in actually playground thingy. I think we're just adding both. Then maybe a park or two would be a nice little thing. At least a large playground like this one would be pretty fitting. We'll just add that somewhere here in the very center. The playground, and then maybe a basketball court next to it. Just like that. We can add a few surfaces as well to make that, you know, look tied into a single park. But otherwise, I think we're just about ready to get going. If there's one little addition I might want to add, it would be grabbing this road again and maybe just adding like a curved segment here. And then seeing if I can have the row housing, the zoning, face this so that it looks towards the harbor. It's gonna look a little odd, but we'll see. It's always a bit of experimentation when we work with zoning, as you guys know oh so well. Anyways, medium density and North American themed, I think is what we're going for. We're just gonna start zoning everything up, and then we may want to splice in some European themed stuff as well. But we're gonna see how this looks at first, and I think this pretty much covers it. Maybe we can just zone. Let's see, we'll add a bit here as well. And I'm gonna restrict just how deep some of these zones are, so that we have a bit of space between Massachusetts Route 28 and some of these buildings here where we can plant some trees and whatnot. Final little addition here that I think is gonna make a lot of difference and add a bit of character is adding electrical cables throughout much of this area. So let's just see, we've got parking on both sides of this one, of course. So we've hit play, and I'm hopeful that we are off to a pretty good start, and that we'll start seeing an immediate reduction in the homeless count, and that some of these homeless people are actually relocating into a new apartment. But I think it's important to note that these changes actually take a bit of time, and we haven't yet reached that stage where the population would take a complete nosedive and all of the homeless people would have to either find a place to live or leave. So we're not quite in the apocalyptic scenario yet. But I'm gonna pause again because it does seem like if you build low rent housing, then that is going to be immediately rented out by former homeless people, which I think makes a ton of sense. So we're actually gonna test this by adding a low rent housing project right here next to the harbor here in Chestnut Terrace. And I think thematically it's gonna make a lot of sense as well. So what I've done is I'm grabbing some of these low rent towers here. I think we're gonna go for I don't want it to be too tall, honestly. I mean, I know I should to ensure that a lot of people can actually live here, but I don't want to go too tall. So I think I'm just gonna grab these smaller ones here. And I've paused. Let's note the homeless population is sitting at 9,760 something. It fluctuates, but not by a lot. So we are gonna place a handful of these, making it a pretty sizable housing project actually. Let's see, I think I'm gonna utilize an additional road here actually, so I'm just gonna free place these. Let me just very quickly grab the new one-way alley. We're gonna, let's see, we'll just cross here. It's gonna add a bit of complexity, which you guys know I love. Then we'll add a few additional ones of these, because now we do certainly have a bit of extra space. And maybe this will be the last one. Let's see. 7 blocks in total. Could we add the final? No, actually, let's just keep it at this. And then we're ready to hit play. We saw an immediate drop of at least 200, which is probably going to correspond to, well, at least some of these units. It seems that there's about 60 residents in each, so not all of them occupied by former homeless people, but definitely a much higher percentage of the people that rent these low rent housing units when we build them will come from the pool of homeless people, which I think it makes perfect sense, but it's also good to just get a proper confirmation, because if you don't use this mod, you don't know. Anyhow, we gotta keep pushing, and I think it would make a lot of sense for nearby Thornton to sort of have the same characteristics as the, well, Chestnut Terrace for now, but unnamed port adjacent district here. So we're gonna have a mixture of traditional row housing units, a bit of public housing, maybe even a proper tower or two, and then we have to carefully try and transition parts of Thornton into some lower densities. It's gonna be interesting. We might do a little terraforming as well, but let's just dive right in.
Time took over you. I never knew what I was in for. I'm over you. We lost our minds. Time took over you. I never knew what I was in for. I'm over you, we lost our minds. Time took over you. I never knew what I was in for. I'm over you. Over you. I'm over you. What I was in for. I'm over you. What I was in for. I'm over you. We lost our minds. Time took over you. I never knew what I was in for. I'm over you. We lost our minds. Time took over you. I never knew I over you. Over you. What I was in for, I over you.
Alright, so in its current iteration, I think Thornton will be able to accommodate around 1,000 people. Now, interestingly, the average wealth level is healthy, and I think that's interesting because with the development of these low-rent housing towers, I saw a pretty immediate drop in our homeless population by another 200 to 300, maybe 300-ish. Not all of them have been able to move into these buildings because they don't even carry, well, I guess they carry around 200 people by now. So interesting stuff going on, and I'm pretty happy with the overall layout. I think we're getting some pretty unique looking row house areas, despite them being zoned and despite many of the row house buildings, of course, looking pretty similar. Now you probably saw that I actually started expanding this way here. So I think before we move onto this area, I am just going to be reducing the size of Thornton. And then I think we're gonna add the oldest trick in the book by having an East Thornton and a West Thornton. And I'm starting to include some of the smaller isles we have here. Some of this, it's almost like marshland, I guess, because I do plan on doing some terraforming and kind of expanding this so that we'll have some low density suburbs out here. But first things first, we'll name this West Thornton. Now, I think I've made the challenge of transitioning to lower density harder than it had to be here in West Thornton because the actual zoning tiles are pretty small. So it's going to be just trying to add in a bit of low rent developments here and there in small patches like this, and hoping that that is going to look just all right. I am currently, as you guys can see, just adding US theme stuff, but I think we can probably just make some of that EU themes because, yeah, as you guys know, they're fairly generic. They are fairly generic, both themes, so that shouldn't be much of an issue, I think. Now, the cool thing with adding in the row housing in between, of course, is that it is an incredibly flexible zoning theme because it's only one tiles wide. So that gives us plenty of opportunities to just kind of sprinkle these in. So if I hit play, they should all develop, which is really nice. Then we can add in maybe just a few more like that, and then we can move into our row housing and start adding that in as well. And just look at the amount of traffic that is pouring into the city from our westernmost outside connection. Always a fantastic look. Just love looking at all the traffic moving in. And I'm just kind of adding these manually so that I can really control the row housing. Also, I kind of tried to emphasize the stop roads here as well. So I guess this one could actually this one can actually just continue through. I wasn't sure about the clearance, but we can just move through here. And that is, of course, the remnants of what used to be here before the interstate cut through. So as we mentioned over here in Chestnut, there's always been like a major road here, but the interstate is obviously relatively new. It's from maybe the 60s or 70s even. So there are small memories of kind of what used to be here. And interestingly, despite adding all this new development, we are in the negative. The current trend population-wise is negative. So something is telling me that we've kind of reached the point in time where the city is going to start pushing homeless people to either find accommodation or move out. So yeah, like I mentioned, I don't think we can stop the tide of people moving out. I don't think that's gonna be possible because it's just a massive phenomena when it really gets going. Like it's 10,000 people, but we're gonna do our very, very best, that's for sure. So I am I am continuing to just zone up and getting as many people into the city as possible, or at least providing as much housing as possible. A few oddities here, but if you guys, I mean, look at this. We're adding so much new housing, people are pouring in, but we are still barely managing the status quo. I'm only now realizing how much we've actually added in this episode so far. Some pretty massive additions to the city. But there's no time to rest. While recapping the Sterling area, I realized there's a bit of empty space here as well. So a low-hanging fruit might be to be able to kind of fit in some 2x2, medium density maybe. Let's see what we can find. It could be... No, it's not going to be mixed use. I guess that would be a little odd. So I just need something that's... I mean, this could kind of work. They've got some balconies and stuff going, right? So let's get this real close to the street here. Why doesn't that work? What am I missing? No clue really, but we'll kind of merge these together. Yeah, if you're not a fan of buildings being spliced together, oof, this is not probably not your favorite episode. And I fully understand if you're not a fan, because this is kind of, you know, the antithesis to a vanilla build. But I think I'm pretty happy with the mixture of zoning and plopping that we are seeing in, well, I think in general in my series, but especially here in Easthaven County. And I think developments like these, it just makes sense to mix and match, honestly. So what color are we going for? They have this nice blue color, which is pretty distinct. So maybe just make that a theme. And these each add around 9 households, and generally from medium density. Oh, that's not a lot of residents for each household. There are a lot of singles in the Fort John, but I mean, I guess it's a modern metropolitan city. There's gonna be quite a few singles. Anyways, that was a nice little addition. I have to find a major area to start doing another proper development. I was considering trying to fill out some of this stuff here because it's so close to downtown, but I still really haven't decided on what we're building here. So if any of you have any ideas for what we should kind of emphasize here where the Johns Bay actually ends, please let me know in the comments. I'm very open to some ideas and suggestions, and I don't think I want to go with like regular city development. I think maybe like a stadium or some sort of complex here could be interesting. So I think we're moving out here to Queen's Cape. It's been a while since we've done any type of development out here, so I think I'm gonna build like a medium density apartment complex here, which is actually a pretty recent addition, but they're going to use an architectural style that is a little more classic, a little older. So just to give an idea, I am going to be using this one here extensively, which I think you can purpose it as like an older building or a super modern development that is just built to kind of have an older architectural style. That's kind of up to you. We're gonna use it for the latter approach, I think. So we are gonna be using the good old parking alleys once again, because they function so well. If we use the key walls to just get rid of, you know, make them a little less wide, basically. So let's just get in. I'll get in a long bendy stretch here, like this, and then I think we'll add in, let's think about this. I think we'll add in a long bendy stretch over here as well. Then we are gonna be adding quaysides to either of them. Then we'll use the regular alleyways with a bit of snapping to connect to this little crossing we have here. So let's see, we're gonna go for a complex curve, and I'll just make a road that kind of passes through here. And if I can disable snapping just to get that connection going, just like that, then I want to do that. And then we'll just connect this one up. And and get that connection going. I wonder if a little roundabout would be a good idea here. It might just be maybe one of these new designs. Seems like I need a small one, unfortunately, but we could just go for that one, I guess. And we can even add an additional one by the entrance to this parking. And did I mess that up? No, I didn't. It's perfect. Now I need to think about how I get the other roads in place. So we're gonna go for a continuous tool and no snapping. And then I'm gonna see if I can get the connection going here, move around, and just hit that connection and then connect up right here. So yeah, there's a bit of an incline, but it's not too bad, I think. And I'm gonna try this upgrade and we'll see how that actually looks. But let's just see if I can make that. Okay, that looks a little interesting, I guess. Fun incline here, but I think we can work with this. I'm just gonna see if it's gonna mess it all up if I grab one of the small pedestrian paths, the small pedestrian street, and kind of run that through. Is that? Yeah, I think that's. Let's get a complex curve, good old, up to about here and down here, and just get that connection going. That looks fairly all right. And then we'll just do a regular curve to connect out here. And now we have it, now we have the entire block, I guess you could say, segmented into 3 lots, although we could add some on the hillside here. So now it's time to add in the buildings. Now these buildings I intended to use, they actually have garages. So as you guys can see, as a very cool feature, the new parking lot roads actually make room for cars to enter and exit if the asset you're placing has car access. It's not ideal for the purpose of this development, but I mean, I guess it's all right. Because, yeah, I don't know. I think this is probably fine. And I am splicing buildings together once more, I know. But I think this is gonna look all right when it's all said and done. And I probably just need to angle these a little more. Because I need the density, and as I said in the very beginning, I don't want to just spam high density stuff to accommodate this homelessness issue. Because that really doesn't fit the overall theme and how we're building the city here. And we've got a bit of space in here, of course. I actually really like that. I think we can fit in a few more buildings right here. And I think that's about it. Now, if you remember from when we built Queenscape, we have this red brick theme throughout the entire area. So I do plan on kind of keeping that. So it's going to be interesting to see if actually this color scheme works perfectly. So we'll just be adding that throughout. I think that was all of them, and we gotta make sure they're actually a part of the area. And it looks like we've added around just about 200 new households to the area. So pretty successful by the according to the mission we're trying to achieve here at least. And I really like how this area looks. As you guys could probably tell by the slow pace and my rambling, it was a very spontaneous decision to add this, but it's just always good practice to try and build something from nothing. So with no pre-planning, which is very much the theme of this episode. Now I kind of want to hit play and see whether this medium density actually has any immediate impact on the homeless population. And I mean, maybe, but not by a whole lot. So nothing substantial. It looks like maybe 60 or 70 people moved in immediately. And now the apocalypse is in full swing. I'm just gonna pause because, I mean, I guess we could do a little more, but just look at the population drop we're starting to see. And it's primarily in our homeless population. This figure here has dropped by 1,000 in like 30 seconds or something like that. So the massive exodus is happening now. And I mean, we've added quite a bit of housing thus far. So guys, we're actually gonna end the episode here because I'm running out of time, and I've paused the game and I'm gonna make sure to save here. I'm gonna let I'm gonna let these areas develop before I shoot the final cinematics so that you have something to look at. But don't worry, we're paused right now, and then I would like you guys input on how much extra work we should put into trying to accommodate even more of these homeless people. Should we dedicate the next episode to also just providing a ton of housing? Should we ignore the issue and have good faith that the city is going to rebalance and we won't have a similar homeless issue in the future? What are your thoughts on this? I really need you guys' input because I'm pretty much open to going in any direction. So with that said, I'm gonna let things develop and shoot those cinematics and eagerly await your input. And this is going to be probably the last video of the year, and the reason I say probably is that it all depends on my ability to edit and put this up before the new year, which I'm not so sure I'm gonna be able to. But we'll see. I have quite a bit of footage to edit now. Either way, I want to thank you all so much for 2024. Those of you that have followed me for a long time will know that the channel absolutely exploded in the last part of 2023, and it just means that 2024 has been a pretty life-changing year for me, with my YouTube hobby growing to such a scale. And it's been the major theme dominating 2024 for me, and I couldn't wish for a more privileged position to be in, honestly. So I just want to thank you guys. Thank you. And I promise 2025 is gonna be even better. We're gonna go above and beyond with content. I'm gonna do my best to continue improving. We're going to start new series. I'm going to add more history, narratives, plot lines, all that stuff. I have a bunch of plans that I can't wait to get started on. So it's going to be so much fun. But that's a wrap. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to see you all in the next one. I wish you all a very safe New Year's Eve. Be careful out there, please, guys. And I see you all in the next year. Goodbye.
Do